The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
We lived in the murder house, we escaped the asylum, we protected the coven, we attended the freak show, we checked into the hotel, we had a Roanoke nightmare, we joined the cult, we stopped the apocalypse, now we will survive 1984. Welcome to Are You Afraid 1984, the unofficial American Horror Story 1984 podcast, a PapiChuloRadio.com original series. Papi Chulo Radio, pop culture on demand. Today is Thursday, September 19th, 2019, and I'm your host, Jeffrey Arauz. During this podcast, we're going to recap, review, and dissect the latest episode of the FX series, American Horror Story 1984. Please welcome my co-hosts, Madison Fitzpatrick.
Hey guys, welcome back.
And Vinnie Hatcher.
Hello.
That was creepy. I liked it.
I figured it fit.
Yes. So let's jump into our recap of Season 9, Episode 1, which was titled Camp Redwood and aired September 18th, 2019. Here's the official synopsis of the episode. In the summer of 1984, 5 friends escape Los Angeles to work as counselors at Camp Redwood. As they adjust to their new jobs, they quickly learn that the only thing scarier than campfire tales is the past coming to haunt you. So I want to get everyone's initial reaction to this episode, and let's start off with one of our American Horror Story veterans, Madison Fitzpatrick. What did you think of the premiere of 1984?
I loved it. I'm so happy with the season so far. I don't know if it's just because I'm such a fan of horror movies or slashers or thrillers, but this whole camp vibe, I'm really, really in love with the cinematography this episode, and just the feel of it. It was exciting, it was fresh, it was new. I'm just really, really pumped to see where this is going to go.
Nice, I like it. And our fresh blood, Vinny, what did you think of the premiere?
So I consider myself kind of a connoisseur of the 80s because that was my childhood, and it just instantly was a throwback for me. You know, I remember curling up in front of my TV on late nights after my parents were asleep, watching, Elvira or Tales from the Crypt was later. But the overall ambiance right as you jump into this episode took me back to the 80s, and everything that they did, it just overall from start to finish, I was absolutely in love, and I really kind of felt transported back. So I think they did an excellent job getting that feeling and that flavor, the music and everything. So I agree with Madison. It was awesome.
Nice. Shout out to Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. And I will co-sign with both of you. I really, really, really liked it. And this is no diss or insult to any of the seasons that came after the season I'm just going to reference. But for me, this was the premiere that hooked me in from the first minute that I've seen of American Horror Story since Roanoke. for me. And I know Roanoke is a little controversial for the AHS community. Some people either really, really liked it, or some people really, really hated it. I was on the opposite end. I really, really liked it. I love the Roanoke season. And for me, this was just like Roanoke for me. Like the very first episode of Roanoke, I was sucked in and I was here for it and really excited. And I felt the same way with this episode. I was sucked in, I was here for it, and I'm really, really excited for this brand new season. It was just a lot of fun. The characters are really good. I co-sign with what you said, Madison. The cinematography is different, so I feel like they hired someone new, and it's just beautifully shot. And the whole vibe, it's a little kitschy, it's a little campy, but it is very creepy. Slashers aren't necessarily my sort of cup of tea as far as horror, in the sense that it's not the type of horror that really scares me. They are fun to watch, so this isn't going to be, at least for right now, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a season that's going to be scary for me, but it was definitely creepy, and I love the ambiance of the episode. So definitely a great start to a brand new season of American Horror Story. So before we get into a thorough recap of the latest episode of American Horror Story 1984, here's our announcer with a few special announcements.
Binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chula radio podcasters discussing some of your favorite television shows. Visit poppychularadio.com/podcasts for a complete list of all the podcasts that we produce. You will get up-to-date information on whether the podcast is currently releasing new episodes or if it's on hiatus. You will also be able to click a link to either take you to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or the Poppy Chula Radio archives to download the podcast. To binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chula Radio podcasts, visit poppychularadio.com/podcasts. Would you like to be one of the podcasters on this podcast discussing your favorite television show? Email talent@poppychularadio.com. We are always looking for new voices to add to our collection of podcasts. To become a co-host, you must be at least 18 years old. You must be comfortable sharing your opinions. And you must be comfortable using Skype. There's no podcast experience required. So if you think you have what it takes to be a Poppy Chula Radio on-air personality, email talent@poppychularadio.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
This is a Poppy Chulo Radio special announcement. PoppyChuloRadio.com is currently looking to expand its web presence, and we're looking for your help. If you're a fan of Poppy Chulo Radio and its signature series, please visit GoFundMe.com/PoppyChuloRadio and help us with our campaign. Every dollar amount donated will be improving the Poppy Chulo Radio experience and making it more interactive and user-friendly. We thank you in advance for your support. This has been a Poppy Chulo Radio special announcement. We now return you to our regularly scheduled programming.
Thanks, announcer. So, well, before we start, there's just something that I really want to say, and I don't know if Madison's going to remember this. Madison has a little bit of a spotty memory, so I don't know if she will back me up. I know, but it's true, admit it. I don't know if she's going to back me up on this, but ever since the beginning, and our very first season here, podcasting about American Horror Story, was the Coven season. And during every season finale, we always do a sort of what-if segment. Like, what would you like to see as the theme in a future episode, not future episode, but in a future season of American Horror Story? And from the beginning, my two themes that I've wanted were, number one, a haunted hotel, and number two, a summer camp in the 1980s. And it's on audio, record, so it is out there in the ether of Apple Podcasts and Google Play and our website.
Obviously they were listening to you.
They were listening to me because we had it with Hotel, even though I'll be honest, Hotel, the way that I would have interpreted it is not necessarily the way that they did in Hotel, but it was still a haunted hotel. And now we're getting my summer camp in the 80s, which I'm really, really excited about. Oddly enough, I have added like a third thing into it, and if this ever happens, I will probably die. But I really want Michelle Pfeiffer on American Horror Story. Like that's
Oh my
something
God.
that's something I've been putting out into the ether, especially after the trailer for Mother came out about 2 years ago. And I was like, I think she would fit into American Horror Story. Michelle Pfeiffer. She doesn't
Oh,
really do
so
horror that
well.
much. I don't think she really does TV at all. But if anyone can convince Michelle Pfeiffer to do television, I feel like Ryan Murphy could. He convinced Catherine Zeta-Jones. So
Do you
why?
know why I think she would be perfect? I agree with you. Is if you've seen the trailers for Maleficent, she does the wholesome villain so well.
Cannot wait
Yes.
for that movie to come out, so I
Oh, me
agree.
too.
So yeah, so Michelle Pfeiffer, if you don't follow her on the gram, she is so like adorkable. Like you all need to follow Michelle Pfeiffer on the gram. She's just, it's fantastic. So Ryan Murphy, if you're listening, or anybody on the AHS team, please call up Michelle Pfeiffer, ask her what she's doing, and see if she can join next season, please. Thank you. Okay, so let's start off by talking about the opening credits. So every season, the opening credits are created, they're crafted around the theme of the season. These opening credits, they were not, I don't want to say leaked, but they were released a couple days before the premiere. They're very 80s. It's very kitschy. Yeah, I mean, even the theme has like a synth sound to it. What did you all think of the opening credits for 1984? Vinny?
Loved it. I think I actually remember that Heather Locklear workout video that they sample in it. But no, it just, it was really like a mashup of so many different things. But the music is what got me, that with the drops of blood. Because, when I look back on the 80s, I'm like, oh, the bright colors, the awesome hair, the goths, the punks, and music that was awesome. And when people rehash the 80s, they always bring back like the peppiness, the Valley Girls. But if you think about it, the 80s was actually pretty violent. So the juxtaposition of the 80s kitschiness with the the undertones of blood and violence to come, it was really, really well done. And it just really, really struck a note with me that I'll touch on later about a theory that I have that I kind of hope isn't true. But no, overall, I think it was really new. It was refreshing, because I'm used to seeing the credits with, what they used to do, but the credits were just another thing that they did new that was really phenomenal in my opinion.
I can't wait for your theory. There are many theories online, so I'm curious to see if it's something that I haven't read. So I'm really excited about that.
Ooh,
We love a good
you're
theory here.
challenging me.
Yes. I will say I liked it. I thought it fit perfectly in with the 1984 and the 80s theme of the season. My only problem with it, and the only reason it's just a teeny tiny little thing for me, is that it wasn't as creepy as like some of the other opening themes. Like even if the season isn't scary to me, like the opening credits are usually like where the creep factor is. And for me, it was just a little too cutesy for me. And I get it. There was blood and there was a lot of, the Mr. Jingles was all over the fucking place in the damn opening credits. But it just wasn't creepy enough for me. It was a little too much like, this would have been an appropriate opening credits for like Scream Queens or something. Because Scream Queens was a little bit more lighthearted and a little bit more comedic. So it didn't bring the creep factor for me, although they are stylistically beautiful opening credits. Like it looked really good and it played the part. It just lacked the creep factor for me, and that would be the only complaint that I would have about the opening credits. Madison, what about you? What did you think of the opening for AHS?
Yeah, I co-sign with both of you. I loved it because it was so 80s, so, like you said, bright and vibrant. It did have blood. The only blood I didn't like in this opening was when the blood kind of splattered over the screen of the workout video. I thought that was like too cheesy and too kind of like not gory enough, or like just unrealistic. So that kind of bothered me a bit. I really liked how they put the actors and actresses' names. I think this is probably like the first time where it hasn't been in that certain font that we
Oh
see
yeah, that
all
is
the
true.
time.
The AHS font, yeah.
Yeah, so nothing has been in that font. I really did like the whole like retro vibe, but something that like has been mentioned to me before is that I really hope that they're not trying to make it almost like Stranger Things like. I know Stranger Things was in the 80s, or like set in the 80s, but I just don't want AHS to be kind of like following a bandwagon of this whole success of bringing back the 80s, which would, we wanted and which would be really cool, but I just hope that it's a little different than a Stranger Things type feel, I guess. I just don't want them to be accused of like copycats type thing, so like I do want it to be a little scarier. Like you said, Jeffrey, I do want it to be a little bit more challenging. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to be like. But yeah, I want it to be a little bit more scary.
Okay. I can feel you on that a little bit. Like, I can see where that criticism sort of comes from, especially because the theme used the synth a lot, and Stranger Things uses that with its, like, background music and stuff. So I can see where people are sort of maybe scared that it'll get too influenced by Stranger Things. I don't think it will, just because they're very different beasts. Like, Stranger Things is sort of an homage to 80s sci-fi and fantasy, and this is clearly going to be an homage to 80s horror and slasher films and that kind of stuff. So let's discuss. Let's see. We'll discuss the characters first before we get into the plot. So I'll save the cold open and everything for a little bit later on in the podcast. And let's talk a bit about the characters that we were introduced to in this episode. We're going to talk about Brooke last, because I feel like we can really go into a lot about Brooke. So we'll talk about Brooke in a moment. So let's talk about Montana Duke. Let's talk about Xavier Plimpton. We'll talk about Chet Clancy and Ray Powell. So it's 4 of the main 5 that end up going to work at the summer camp. What were your first impressions on these characters, Madison?
I thought they were pretty interesting. Definitely not as like teen, I would say. Definitely like I got the vibe that they were like university or a little older, like young adults. And I thought like we have every kind of type of person in this group, I would say. So I think they covered their bases pretty good. And I think we're gonna find out like a lot deeper like than they actually seem. Like, you have your jock, you have your smart girl, you have your more promiscuous girl, you have your black guy, you have your gay guy, right? So it's kind of like they covered all the bases, but I feel like there's going to be so much more that we have to learn about them, and I'm excited for that, because I definitely noticed things that are like kind of underlying, but yeah, I like them. I'm excited to see what what they're gonna be more like, I guess.
Okay. What about you, Vinny?
I actually really like them. Montana's probably my favorite right now, just because like the part when she's like, "Hey, nice bod. I'm not a les, by the way. I'm just friendly." Like that was the moment I'm like, okay, I like her. And then like later in the episode when she wakes up with the switchblade, she kind of reminds me of like a Valley Girl mixed with a character from Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a chick that in her dream she had a mohawk and the switchblades. She's got that rough edge, but a little bit of like a pleasant personality under it. But overall, no, I thought they were over the top, but not so over the top that I'm like, God, I can't stand these guys. They're just paper cut stereotypes. Every time I was like, oh, there's the gay guy. There's the token blonde girl and the token black guy, the jock. They actually demonstrated a little bit of depth. And one thing that I really latched onto was that if you think about it, each of these characters has some kind of an aspiration that they really, really, really lust after. Like with her, Montana Duke, it was the aerobics. With Xavier, I'm still on the fence on what his exact. The acting. That's what it was. With the other two, it was the Olympics and working in the medical field. So I just kind of got a feeling of all of these people are like they desperately want something, and it's almost like that desperation brought them together. So I think that's an interesting thread for later. But no, I really like them. They all made me laugh at one point in the show or another, and I feel that they filled the stereotype without making it ridiculously dumb.
I like it. So wait, Xavier's gay? Did I totally miss that?
You have a hint in the episode.
Yeah.
Oh, with the phone call?
Well, no, you remember when he made that phone call? Or if you said phone call, I didn't hear you. But yeah, when he's like, you think you can take your dick and go here or something?
Okay.
Like
That's what I thought. Okay. All right. Okay. So, let me just say, and I'm going to say this for Emma Roberts in just a moment. Billie Lourd, the fact that they're allowing her to play against, like, the type that she's been playing so far, not only on American Horror Story, but over on Scream Queens, I gotta give them props for that, because Billie Lourd, I'm so glad she's playing a different type of character. She's always played sort of like the really quiet, I don't want to say mousy, because that's not really probably
like the Wednesday Addams type.
The Wednesday Addams, but like a really quiet, not even Wednesday Addams, because I'm trying to think of Chanel. I forget which Chanel she was over on Scream Queens, but
maybe sociopathic.
No, because that's not how she was in Apocalypse. She wasn't.
Oh, that's right.
Innocent?
Yeah,
Innocent?
she seems very, and she always plays the innocent character. That's the appropriate term. Thank you, Madison. She always plays a very innocent type of character, and this seems to be the season where they're finally allowing her to spread her wings a little bit and to play a different kind of character at least against type, versus some of the previous characters that she's played in the Ryan Murphy verse. So I really like that a lot, and it made me really gravitate towards Montana because she seems like a really fascinating character. I believe this is Gus Kenworthy's first acting gig, if I'm not mistaken, because he's an actual Olympian. I don't know if he has the medals. I'm not really that into the Olympics, but I believe this is the first time he's ever acted. I could kind of tell that a little bit at certain points, but sometimes he really sucked me into his character. So there were a couple little moments where I was like, okay, this is your first time doing this. But other times I really sort of believed Chet and him as a character. I was very worried for Ray throughout this entire episode, just because this is a horror series set in the 80s, and there is that horrible cliche, that the black dude always dies first in horror movies in like the 80s and 90s. I'm glad they didn't go that route because the character is really interesting, and I like his dynamic within the group, especially with like Chet, and it looked like, I don't know what it was, it looked like he was flirting with Brooke at a certain point, which was really interesting. But yeah, the entire group I thought was really fascinating, and I agree with both of you. They were very vibrant characters. I like that they all have sort of life goals, and they're certainly three-dimensional characters, which, we could go back to 80s horror movies and we can count how many one-dimensional characters there are in those movies. And, we'd probably spend, sleepless nights still counting them. So let's talk about Brooke. The reason why I wanted to talk about her separately is because this is another moment in American Horror Story history where an actor is playing against type. Emma Roberts is usually, the bitchy force to be reckoned with, either on American Horror Story or on Scream Queens. And this is the first time that I've ever seen her play sort of the quote-unquote good girl, and I don't want to say mousy, but because I don't think Emma Roberts could ever be mousy, but this is, I guess, as mousy as Emma Roberts can be, and I really liked it. Like, I think Brooke is technically our protagonist of the season because we did follow her to her home, and so we saw a little bit more of her life in this first episode. So I would say she's the protagonist. We're like seeing the season through her eyes, and I really like what Emma Roberts did with Brooke Thompson. So let's talk about Brooke. Maddie?
I really liked her as like our protagonist. I found that she did it really well. I wasn't surprised that she could play the more innocent character really well, just because I can see her turn on a dime. Like, I feel like if Brooke needs to be bitchy, she will be. But I don't know. I think she's doing a great job, in my opinion. And as a character, you know, this is the girl that you're rooting for because she seems so, innocent. She's just like this lonely girl who has an apartment by herself, and she's in school, and, she has no friends. So you're happy that she's found all these people to have her summer with. So, yeah, I like her. I think she'll be a good protagonist, I think, and probably lead the pack, but I'm kind of worried that she's going a little cuckoo.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah.
So apparently if you want to get Emma Roberts to play a nice girl, she has to be a brunette. It's like the blondes are the bitchy ones. Right, Maddie?
Right.
Maddie's a blonde.
I'm not.
Sort of ish. I don't know. Okay.
Half and half.
Half and half. Vinny, what about you? What's your initial take on Brooke?
Well, before I talk about Brooke, I would be remiss in my duties if I did not correct you, Jeff. This was actually not Gus Kenworthy's first acting foray.
Oh, okay.
He has starred in such roles as Gus Kenworthy in The Real O'Neills, and Gus in The Olympic Dreams, and most importantly as a skier in Sharknado 5.
Okay, so this is his first acting
Stop,
gig.
that doesn't count.
I
Jesus
know.
Christ.
Just the fact that he was in Sharknado, I had to.
Oh yeah, we were all in Sharknado.
But-
Don't you remember? No, I'm just saying, joking.
I want to throw up.
I know, because I feel like everybody and their mother was in one of those Sharknados. So anyway,
Yeah.
Continue on, Vinny.
But so with Brooke, it was funny because my boyfriend and I talked about this before he fell asleep, and I watched the rest of the episode without him. It was just so interesting to see. You expect these like razor tip quips to come out of her mouth every moment because of Madison, of Chanel. But then I thought about it back to Freak Show, because if I remember correctly in Freak Show, she played a duplicitous character, but who actually ended up kind of having like a good heart to a degree.
That is
It's been
true.
a while.
Yes.
So I knew that she had it in her, but I did not know that she was going to do it this well, but I should have expected it because she's definitely very talented. The one thing that I get from the character of Brooke is I think that right now she's our protagonist, but there's, like, I agree with you, Maddie. I think there is an element of mental fragility in that, like, looking at her apartment, how empty it was, how she sat there eating dinner completely by herself, and living in Los Angeles, it's just, I feel like there's a story there. Maybe she had a mental breakdown, or she's about to, because in everything she's in, she's wound so tight that I just keep expecting her to, like, blow up. I don't know. I just get that feeling that there's more there that's going to come into play later. But overall, I thought it was awesome. She definitely handled the psychic mind, or the psycho attack, and then dealing with the ramifications of that afterwards really, really well with the character, the shakiness and the second guessing of, did I really just see Mr. Jingles? Yeah, I think I did. Or wait, no, I don't know. Like, I'm curious to see where this character goes, definitely.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit on the same wavelength, Vinny, because I feel like she's going to be, and even though she's not narrating this, but the only term that I can think of is like an unreliable narrator, just because she had all that knowledge about serial killers and whatnot, but then she's sleeping with the window open and like maybe the door unlocked and that kind of stuff. So certainly she's got issues, and I'm hella intrigued to see what they are and how it's going to come out. This is a horror series that is taking place in the 80s, and there are a lot of times in 80s horror, where like the main character like slowly unravels and goes crazy. So this might be what we're gonna see with Brooke at some point, potentially. Who knows? So let's continue on and talk about Margaret Booth. So she is the new owner of the summer camp, and she has a bit of a history with the camp. It turns out, way back in the 70s, she's a survivor from a massacre that occurs at the camp. Mr. Jingles goes crazy, the man that worked at the camp. He ended up massacring everyone in the cabin that she's in. He ends up chopping her ear off, but for some reason she still wants to open up a summer camp, to sort of leave the trauma behind. What did we think of Margaret, and do we trust her? Vinny?
No, I don't. Have either of you seen the Sleepaway Camp movies?
I saw the first one, yes.
She
No.
reminds me of Angela from Sleepaway Camp, but not in the first one. In the later Sleepaway Camp movies, Angela comes back as a camp counselor, and she's the counselor that everyone's like, God, she's so crazy. She's super nice and just wholesome, and in reality, she's psychotic and killing everybody. The religiousness and the there's an element of repression there, definitely, because she's bringing up sex a lot, I felt like, especially when she was talking about self-abuse. So maybe she feels guilty. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't trust her. I feel like she's hiding something, or there's more to tell with her story. Because to be honest with you, when she was telling the story, before we saw that she was just part of that pile of corpses closer to the door, I honestly thought she was the chick that lifted up her sweatshirt.
Yes.
Yeah, and then she wasn't. I was kind of disappointed, honestly. I thought that would have made more sense. But yeah,
Yes.
I don't. Yeah, I don't trust her.
100%. I thought she was going to be her too. But then they actually used her face.
How?
And I was like, oh, okay. So I guess that wasn't the younger version of her. They decided to go that route. Although, if she's not to be trusted.
How could that be her? How could that be her? She was stabbed through the eyeball.
Oh.
Yeah,
Wait, no.
that's what I don't get
yes,
either.
yes,
I
yes,
think unreliable
yes.
narrator.
She could be an unreliable narrator, though. Even if she, that whole scenario could have just been a lie. Let's be real. If we are going under the track of she can't be trusted, her whole story could be a lie potentially.
Well, I have a thought on that. Going back to her talking about sex and feeling guilty, if you were that third girl who was in the middle of a slightly lesbianic threesome back in the 70s, and it's now the 80s where it's still not fully accepted, and you were the only survivor, you'd have a lot of sexual guilt because she was so hesitant in the opening credits. So I almost wondered if it was an unreliable narration and she is actually that girl who ended up surviving, but she's just telling it so she sounds like the innocent victim who found Jesus.
Well, there you go. I will say how, the threesome did not bug me, clearly. None of the sex bugged me. The thing that bugged me the most was that they were going to have sex in the cabin with the kids. I was like, really?
Right.
That's just all kinds of gross. Can't y'all go, outside and, bang by the woodshed or something? It was just, that shit was creepy to me. I was like, that's just tasteless. Horny-ass camp counselors. Maddie, what about you? What did you think of Margaret Booth?
I'm not a fan.
Oh, okay. But you love some Leslie Grossman.
I do. But I don't know. I don't see her as as the owner. I don't see her. I don't know. I don't know if I don't see Leslie Grossman in this character, but I'm not getting it. I don't, and I'm not believing in the character. I don't know why. It's not that she's not doing the part well. I just can't picture her. I feel like this is beneath her. This character is beneath her. Yeah.
It's really hard to grasp her. Yeah. What was interesting is I honestly thought they were going to have Matthew Morrison's character be the owner, because typically in these situations, right? typically in these movies, it's because in like Friday the 13th, which there were obviously a lot of homages to, I think his name was Steve, was the owner of the camp when they were reopening it. And I agree, there's definitely just something, maybe it's the way she's playing the character or she's handling it. She doesn't come off as an owner, and it doesn't, there was something weird with her acting style with it too. Maybe, I don't know, I could go further into it psychoanalyzing, but I won't. But I do agree with you.
Yeah, so I don't know. I hope she gets better, and I hope maybe like we see some twists and turns from her character, but I just can't grasp her character at this point. I don't know.
Okay. That's interesting. I will agree that I feel like she can't be trusted. I feel like there's more to the story. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she's getting her hands dirty. And yeah, so we can discuss theories and whatnot a little bit later on. So since Matthew Morrison was mentioned, let's talk about Trevor Kirchner. So he made a big impression on the cast. And this, I will say this. I'm not the type of person that associates a particular character with an actor. Like, I feel like that's so, like, passé now, you know, with actors, you know, taking on very different roles and this, that, or the other. But I will say, I don't think I've seen Matthew Morrison in anything since Glee. At least nothing that I've watched. So, for me, when I think of Matthew Morrison, I think of Mr. Shoe from Glee. I don't think of Mr. Shoe anymore after the huge dick and the booty and going downtown while I guess Christine, the car, is overlooking on the cliff.
I didn't get that car. Who was that anyway?
Oh, we'll talk about that in a moment. But
Okay.
but yeah, so Mr. Shoe is no longer here. Apparently, it is Trevor with the porn stash. So let's talk about Trevor. Vinny.
So, yeah, I'm with you, Jeff. I haven't seen him in anything since Glee, and I recently, on my lunches at work, went on this spree of like watching random old Glee music videos for the hell of it. So I had Mr. Schuster like fresh in my mind, and then in stalks Trevor and his anaconda. You know, seeing the trailer where they introduced the characters and they obviously put a highlight on his bulge, it was just it didn't register that it was Mr. Shoe at first, and I had to go back and watch it again. But I think it just goes again with like playing against type, you know, and him playing this character that is pretty much like Ron Jeremy here. That's who he reminded me of. It was really interesting. Like I'm curious to see where his character is going to go, if he's just going to be fodder and he's going to die in one of the upcoming episodes, or if he's going to last longer. Like the machismo and the arrogance and just going completely against what you would expect Matthew Morrison to play, and he did a bang up job. Like I bought it 100%. Like when he was sitting there, yeah, Jane Fonda, I call her Jane. I was like, okay, yeah, I really dig him, and not just because of, you know, down there.
That was just so stupid. I called her Jane. I'm like, really?
Right.
You think?
When he said that, I was like, did he really just say that?
Yes.
It's so Los Angeles, though. It really, really is.
It was funny. Maddie, what did you think of Trevor and Big Trevor?
I really liked Big Trevor. I mean, Trevor. No, I really liked this character. Like I said, I watched him in Glee and stuff too, so it was really, really cool seeing him in something different and something completely different. So yeah, I think his character is going to be very, very interesting because he said like that he, you know, oh, like shouldn't you guys be fraternizing? Like you guys can't be fraternizing. Like didn't you know that? And he's like, oh, I'm just kidding. So I feel like he might get caught in the whole he needs to be an adult, but he also wants to hang out with the kids, like that type of thing as well. And that might be interesting. And then his whole bet with himself. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll see what happens there. So, before we get into the plot, there are a couple of other characters. I'm going to lump them together because we did not get a lot from these characters in this episode. Maybe maybe a couple, maybe at least one or two stood out versus the rest. But let's talk about Rita. Let's talk about Chef Birdie. And let's talk about Richard Ramirez. Maddie?
Well, the fact that Richard Ramirez is in this thing is like really amazing.
Yes, which is
I
a
didn't really
connection
know.
to American Horror Story Hotel.
Yes, I didn't like realize it was him until like a while. But yeah, and then I got it and I was like, oh my God, that's like amazing. This is so cool. And it's funny because it's like he's probably not even the main, villain in this show. So it's kind of like, like put you aside even though you're like a mass serial killer. Like that's fine. So that's pretty funny. Rita, I really like her character. I think I'm really gonna like her throughout the show. I'm very excited of like who she's going to befriend more in the show, as I think that she is really, really independent and like doesn't care what other people think type thing. And Mrs. Birdie, yeah, she's bomb. I love her.
Vinny, what about you?
So yeah, Richard Ramirez. And I'm not going to say too much without going into my theory or two into later, but I feel like his portrayal was very polarized. Like if you go back to Richard Ramirez in Hotel, which was, it was the real Richard Ramirez in that universe, and compare it to this one was like, I'm going to find you. Satan will help me. It was just really polarized and over the top. And I mean, maybe they're just going, if this stays what it is, a camp story, and they don't do any kind of other things and keep it this way, that'll just be, it is what it is. But I don't know, I felt like it was like extra serial killery, and like extra on the Satanism. But I digged it. I thought it was kind of cool. Birdie, I have a sneaking suspicion that her and Mr. Jingles had a hoedown. Like, I could see them having had some kind of thing. Maybe he liked her and she didn't return it, or maybe they were hooking up behind the shed. I don't know. But she just seems like the type that she would have been, I don't know, maybe someone he would have been into. I don't know. That's just some random thing I thought. But I agree. I think she's really the shit. I think she's funny. She was like, yeah, girly boy, why don't you help me haul these over to the pantry? And it was really, really funny. And Rita, love her. I think that my favorite line of that episode was, girl, you tripping, when they go to look for the body. Like just the look on her face, like she's very animated as far as like her facial features. And like, I can't wait to see her react to later events in the series.
I like it. Rita was fun. Birdie was fun as well. Richard Ramirez was interesting, like the way that they're going to incorporate the Night Stalker into the series. I hope they do it properly and it is actually an interesting story arc. He is listed as part of the main cast. And people like Birdie and Ray, they are recurring. So, to be quite honest, that doesn't necessarily mean much. I believe there was a season where Adina Porter wasn't a part of the main cast, but she was in like every single freaking episode.
Yep.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that we will be seeing a lot more of the Night Stalker and a lot less of like Birdie and Ray, etc. But it was kind of interesting that he was listed as part of the main cast. So I wonder what that means. I wonder if that arc will grow and if he will pose a threat to our people. I guess we will have to stay tuned. So let's talk about the storyline. We haven't talked about Mr. Jingles. We'll get to him in a moment because I feel like we might have theories as to what Mr. Jingles means and that sort of thing. So the main arc of the storyline is this group of friends meeting at an aerobics class. Brooke is the new one, and Xavier mentions the fact that because the Olympics are going to be in town and it's going to be crazy, and also there's a serial killer out there, he's leaving LA to for a couple hours away to be a counselor at the summer camp Redwood, and how they're looking for people, and so he convinces his friends as well as the new girl in town, Brooke, to go and be counselors at this summer camp. Brooke is initially hesitant, but when she gets her own experience with the Night Stalker, she ends up fighting back, I will say. She decides to leave town and to head with these new people to Camp Redwood. While there, that's when they get the 411 on the camp, not only from Rita, but from the survivor of the Camp Redwood massacre in the 70s, Margaret, and she ends up showing them her it's not her ear, her lack of ear, because she got it chopped off by Mr. Jingles. Apparently, Mr. Jingles worked at the camp. He's a former, in the military, and I guess one night he snapped and he massacred an entire cabin. He liked to keep mementos from the people that he killed, and he was discharged from the military because he was doing that. He was chopping people's ears off and putting them in a necklace around, that he would wear and that kind of thing. And so she got her ear chopped off, but she said that Jesus helped her stay very still and saved her, and that's why she seems very holier than thou and that kind of thing. And throughout the night, we haven't talked about the hitchhiker. So, he wasn't a hitchhiker, but our group end up crashing into a guy very I know what you did last summer-ish. And he's sort of mumbling some crazy stuff. They take him back to the camp, and when he's sort of patched up, he's like, "Where am I?" And he tells Brooke, "You need to leave. Like, you're all gonna die." And that's the same thing that the gas attendant told them, that they're all gonna die. Bad shit happens at Camp Redwood, and we see that this guy also has an ear chopped off. So let's stop here, because the rest of it is sort of like the end of the episode. What did you all think of the mythos that was being built throughout this premiere about Camp Redwood, all of the very sort of, the horror trope of like, you're all gonna die, like you shouldn't go there, and our character is sort of blindly following the light to their destination. Maddie?
I really thought it was different because normally, like, in a horror movie, like, everything goes so fast because you only have, like, an hour and a half to watch it. But this is a show. So I already knew that, like, it was kind of going to be dragged out a bit. But a lot of the main things, like, already kind of happened already. Of course, it's all cliche. But we knew that this season was going to do that. It was going to call back on, I Know What You Did Last Summer by hitting the hiker, like things from Halloween and things from, Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like all these things. But I think they did them so well, and I was so, like, nothing about it made me go, really? Or like, oh my god, I can't believe they just did that. Like, everything was still so well done and so interesting. I like the whole massacre of the 9, not 10, campers. And I think it's interesting how it all closed and stuff. But I want to know why these people were like, oh, well, you're going to die there. Well, it's like, why? Do you know that something I don't know? Tell me. Like, do you just think it's haunted? The guy that did it's in jail now, right? Or do you know that he's out? Like, it's kind of like, well, what's going on? Why aren't you telling me? Are you just being a creepy-ass man? Like, what's happening? So, but, yeah, I really like the horror effect of this season so far.
Vinny, what about you? What'd you think of the mythos that was being introduced?
I think it's very interesting. It's obviously a very overplayed trope of, like, back this many years ago, this slaughter happened from this crazy guy. But one of the things that I really enjoyed is that we saw the face of the killer. We know who Mr. Jingles is. We see his face. I don't think we saw it in the past, but we saw his face in present day at least, which was kind of refreshing because usually that's something that they hold on to, reveal later in a shocking moment. But, we saw that. And I agree with all of the Easter eggs, as I think of them, all of the references from I Know What You Did Last Summer with the hit to the guy at the gas station, referencing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, don't go play in empty houses, you're going to die. Also, one of the things I didn't think of until later, one of my absolute favorite holiday horror movies, Black Christmas. And There's a Stranger in the House with Carol Kane. The very end when the phone call came into play, that kind of reminded me of those. But just overall, it just goes back to what I originally said. Obviously, Ryan Murphy is a child of pop culture, and he uses it a lot in his work, but in this instance, he definitely used it, just like Maddie said, where I wasn't sitting there like, okay, yeah, you're desperately referencing that movie, so people will get it. It's too blatant. It flowed really, really well. The one thing that I'm curious about is if everything in that premiere happened simultaneously, or if we're being led to believe it did, and some things happened at different times, because the hitchhiker, if Jingles didn't escape until that point in the episode that we see it happen, then how did the hitchhiker lose his ear?
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me think that maybe Jingles, I don't know, maybe there's another Jingles, maybe there's someone else, maybe it was the lady, the Margaret Booth. I don't know. It just really struck me as this is definitely something I want to find the answer to later. But overall, I think we've got a solid foundation, and it definitely got my mind thinking of how many ways could this all be explained, like what's going to happen, and I really am curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the mythos was really fascinating. They're setting up a really neat season. I'm really just curious as to what we're going to see next, because we got a lot of really interesting information in this episode. As you guys mentioned, some cliches, but cliches not necessarily used in a cliche-y kind of way. It was done in a really nice sort of more homage type of way. And I was just really captivated by everything. I love premieres because we get a lot of information. We get a good download of info that we all need to know for the rest of the season. And sometimes it can be very exposition-y, but sometimes a showrunner or a writer, a producer, a director, they can figure out the proper way to express everything without it feeling like we're getting bogged down with information. And I thought they did a really great job with this premiere, sort of explaining everything that we need to know without it feeling too heavy. And and everything was really just fascinating for me. Like, I was trying to soak up as much information as I can, and I tried to just really see how everyone reacted to everything that was around them, to see if that could give us a little bit of a hint as to people's sort of true intentions and that kind of thing. Before we get into sort of like the final third of the episode and the plot there, something that I do want to bring up is that we started to get the taste that, in particular, our people are housing secrets. And we got that first taste with Xavier. It looks like he's running away from someone. Technically, Brooke is running away from something as well, but that was filled in with everyone. It wasn't like she kept that to herself. But it looks like Xavier has a secret, and I'm kind of wondering if that's going to be a similar trope that we're going to see with some of the other characters, if some of the other characters are sort of running away from things that might necessarily come back and haunt them in a sense. What did you all think of that? Or do you think it's just going to be an isolated storyline for Xavier? I'll open it up to the floor, whomever wants to jump in first.
We actually got a hint to that earlier with Ray. If you remember when they were talking and he was like, man, I got to get out of the city. He was so ready to go. He wanted to go that night.
That is true.
So yeah, I kind of agree. I think it goes back to like all of these characters having something they're desperate for. I think all of these characters have something they're also desperate to get away from.
Yeah, like they all have secrets, and that's why I said like I'm so interested to learn more about them, like individually as well as to like what they're hiding, why they would just give up their whole summer, just like, to be with kids and stuff. Like I
Yeah.
get it, but it's kind of like a weird thing to just be like, oh yeah, sure, let's go. Like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that it sounded pretty shady. I mean, I have to put myself back in the mindset of like we didn't have internet back then. We didn't have phones where you could research it. But when Xavier was like, yeah, I got hooked up with this gig and they're desperate for counselors. I'm sorry, red flag, red flag. Like this guy that I just met at my aerobics class is offering up to take all of us, these people that
yep.
from Brooke. It just, yeah, they were all so quick to jump on it and they keep calling themselves friends. But if you think about it, are they really? Because the way that they act, there's a lot of like tension I got from them in that group. I don't know if they're necessarily as close as they want everyone to think they are.
That's interesting. Yeah, and and the fact that Rita sort of brings that up later on in the episode, it was kind of maybe an aha moment for them, but clearly, they're in a horror movie, so they're not gonna realize that it should be an aha moment for them. But the fact that Rita was like, don't you find it strange that none of us have experience at a summer camp? Like, I don't have experience at a summer camp. You guys don't have experience at a summer camp. Don't you find that a little strange that they
Yeah.
were just hiring people and this, that, or the other?
Yeah, with no screening. Like, I mean, in reality, that would not happen. Even if they were desperate, I feel like they would not just invite. I mean, looking at Montana, that is
I don't
not
know.
someone.
Come on. This is the 80s.
That's true. That touche.
That's funny. Okay. So moving right along. So we see that somewhere near the camp, one would assume, Mr. Jingles escapes from his cell. So we learn that Margaret was the, what would you call it, like the star witness that locked Mr. Jingles away, and Mr. Jingles faked a suicide by hanging and ended up killing the orderly, ended up escaping,
And I
and
love that what's his face
mhm.
from the X-Files, isn't it?
Oh, Mitch Pileggi, yes.
Oh my
Yes.
God, it makes me so happy when
That
I
was
saw him. I'm
fantastic.
like, oh my God.
Yeah. And as he left, Mr. Jingles released all the patients to create chaos. And we see Mr. Jingles head on over to the gas station that's near the camp and ends up killing Patrick Swayze's brother. And then we see that he has made his way to the camp. He kills he isn't a hitchhiker, but he kills the guy that they hit, and Brooke ends up finding the guy dead and ends up finding Mr. Jingles, and after a very horror movie style chase where poor Brooke falls down way too many times, she does end up surviving, so maybe she is the final girl, who knows. And once they go and sort of you know, uh, uh, like double check everything. It turns out that the body's gone. There are no signs of Mr. Jingles. It could sort of be explained away that maybe Brooke is having a little bit of PTSD based off of her experience with Richard Ramirez. And yeah, they sort of write it off as nothing. But late at night, the telephone starts ringing, the payphone that is, and even after the guy that they hit was like the lines are down and everything, it's ringing. She goes by herself to answer the phone, and all she hears are keys jingling, and we see what appears to be Richard Ramirez in the forest nearby-ish, I guess. We're going to have to break all that down. So let's talk about the end of the episode. Let's talk about what we think happened. Do we think everything that we saw actually happened? And well, we'll get into theories in a moment. So let's just talk about the end of the episode, Maddie.
Wasn't too like bothered by the end of the episode or anything like that. It definitely left like cliffhangers and questions, but I think this whole season is just questions. um, it's the first episode. Of course, we're gonna want to know more and stuff like that. So, I think it ended well. A little confusing, and just because like have seen possibly Brooke hallucinating. Is this another hallucination? So
When do you
we
think
don't
she was
really know.
hallucinating?
I don't think she was, but like, who knows? It's American Horror Story. This shit could change like really fast. So I'm speculating.
Okay, I like it. Vinny, what about you?
Well, I have to comment on the homage to Halloween. I just can't go without it. The insane asylum escape a la Michael Myers in Halloween when Dr. Loomis drives up. I mean, it was such a great example of what we've been talking about, how they've taken scenes and instances and cliches from previous generations and they used it, but they didn't use it in a bad way. I loved it. Dr. Hopple, which I didn't know was her name until just now. When she's driving up and you've got the asylums open with the patients running it and all around, it really gave me, callbacks to the first time I watched Halloween and how creepy it was to see those patients in the rain. So it was kind of like a reminiscence for me, and I thought it was really well done, the way that Jingles killed the orderly. It was just interesting, and I agree that Emma Roberts fell a lot during the chase scene. The hallucinations, I don't know. I could easily buy the PTSD and the hallucinating because she's got this PTSD and the dumbasses around her are telling the story of Mr. Jingles. It's like, oh, that's a smart idea. So yeah, she could have hallucinated it. If she didn't hallucinate, I want to know how in the hell did Ramirez find her? Because this is not the realm of GPS. This is not the time of anything locator being able to find somebody. So that he would have had to spy on her somehow to know where she was going. So that's my biggest question is if he was really there, how the hell did he find her? And I want to know who killed the hitchhiker because I don't think it was Jingles. I almost wonder if it was Margaret Booth because she did show up wearing a very similar looking slicker.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like that theory a lot. So going back to the Christine car, while Montana was getting was getting eaten out.
While Trevor was demonstrating his ability to hold his breath Olympically long.
There you go. I think that was Richard Ramirez. Why? I feel like that has to make sense that makes the most sense if he is actually there and if he isn't a hallucination. I just don't know how he would know either because she was like a last minute addition to the group. I mean, let's be real. Everyone was a last minute addition. But I would think if anyone out of them would have like the least amount of information about the camp, it would have been Brooke. So it's not like she's got a pamphlet at home. So if Ramirez would have broken in and would have, seen it or something, like I don't know how he would have gotten there unless he was.
Also, why didn't Montana say
stalker.
anything when the lights went on?
Yeah.
Like when the car lights, why did she just go, oh, let's go somewhere else? Instead of being like, let's go somewhere else. There was a car there, like with the lights on.
Yeah,
why?
That was suspicious. Yeah, that was so maybe that's part of her past coming back to haunt her.
Yeah.
We didn't think of that. So now look at you, Maddie, allowing us to think about that. I like it.
Oh, look at me.
Yes, good job. I like it. Because like the only thing that I can think of is like he had to have like stalked them. Once like he would have followed her, seen that that she got into the mystery van with the other Scoobies, and he would have had to have followed them like all the way there. And I don't know how the mind of a serial killer works, so maybe one of you can explain it. Maddie, you seem kind of serial killery to me. But, like, would he become that fixated on his prey to, like, have, like, driven a bajillion miles to, like, kill her? I don't know. Maybe
Who knows?
he felt emasculated or something because she fought back and kind of got the upper hand on her. I did feel like he was a little pussy-ish in the sense that he just really gave up. He was like, "Oh, okay, I'm just gonna come back and kill you again by the love of Satan,"
Right?
and all that shit. I was like, can't you just like stab her or something? Like it was very weird. Anyway,
Yeah, I would agree. It happened so fast, like I had to rewind and watch it a
yeah,
couple
the
times
neighbor
just to
was
see.
banging on the wall though, saying, "What is going on?" and that kind of thing. So maybe he was
Yeah,
spooked. I don't know. It just seemed. I don't know. If you're a serial killer, I feel like you would have gotten the job done. Not that I'm rooting for serial killers, but it just seemed a little weak. But I have a theory about Mr. Jingles, and I thought about it like after the episode, but that was forgetting the fact that he did actually kill people. But my theory is that he okay, I have a couple theories. So let's go with the first one. What if he didn't kill the people in the cabin? What if it was Margaret all along and she framed Mr. Jingles, sent Mr. Jingles away? She would have been the only witness. She would have been the one that would have signed his death warrant and whatnot, basically. She was a young white woman, so the jury would have believed her. And she sends Mr. Jingles away. And so this is Mr. Jingles' sort of chance to get his revenge on Margaret because he had the article about the camp reopening and that sort of triggered in him this hatred for Margaret for like sending him away and that sort of thing. And so now he has escaped to get his revenge on Margaret. And in this version of my theory, Margaret would have been the one that would have killed the hitchhiker. He wasn't a hitchhiker, but you know what I'm saying. And Margaret is the one that's behind sort of like the active killings or whatever will be active killings at Camp Redwood. The other side of the theory that I have is what if Margaret and Jingles are working together? I think we've kind of seen this before on American Horror Story, where like the killer has like a protege. So I don't know if we will see something like that again. Maybe they could remix it a little bit, but I could also see Margaret, whether it's because she becomes a devotee to Mr. Jingles or because of all the trauma of her survival and maybe a little bit of survivor's guilt and that kind of stuff. Maybe she has a what would you call it, like a psychotic break, and she ends up continuing on the Jingles legacy. Maybe I don't know. But I feel like because we've seen Jingles' face, much like you mentioned, Vinny, I think there has to be way more to the story than it's just Mr. Jingles killing people. Vinny, you have been teasing us with your theory. What's your theory?
All right. So it's not exactly completely formulated, but to touch on the killings back in the 70s. So judging Margaret how she is now, and I'm being actually, I think I'm being fair. I'm judging her based on her nightgown and also just her personality in the present. She was obviously very chaste, if we're to believe her narration, that is. I could very easily see Margaret back then having been the butt of many jokes. Kind of like Brooke is now in the sense of like, oh, the last American virgin. She was obviously not sexual And obviously everyone back then was, based on the threesome, if we're to believe her story. So I could very easily see a scenario where back then she was a counselor, that she was like the perfect counselor, type A personality and also super religious, and everyone made fun of her. They were all out drinking and screwing and doing all this nasty stuff, and she just didn't think they deserved to be there. She was a social justice warrior with a knife. I don't know. But I could very easily see her taking Jingle's history, having been told that story back then, and using that as her way of, all right, I'm not only going to kill all these sluts, but I'm also going to make myself a victim, make myself famous by being the survivor and cutting off my own ear to make it look like I was part of it. I could very easily see that being something that happened, and Jingles being her fall guy. I could also see a variation where Jingles also killed people and she did as well, maybe together as a protege, or maybe they just both were killers and she was like, you know what, a perfect way for me not to get caught, I want to pin it all on him. But as my overarching theory, and part of me doesn't want this to happen because it happened with Roanoke, but going back to how I talked about everything being so polarized, yes, we agree that Over the Top wasn't too over the top, but still, it's over the top. There's a very television episode feel to everything that's happening. All of the characters fitting these stereotypes, all of these horror movie cliches. I could see it where this is actually a movie being filmed in Los Angeles or on location. So not a reality show like Roanoke, but a legitimate film. And what we're seeing is the movie itself. And maybe at one point they're going to turn it on its head and we're going to find out that these are all people playing these roles and see different personalities come from them. And that to me is how I justified Richard Ramirez showing up. Because maybe he's one of the people's boyfriends and he's not actually there to do anything bad, or maybe he is there to do something bad, but that's how he knew where to find her. And what we're seeing is the first breaking of that fourth wall in the television show or movie that's being filmed. But I kind of hope they don't do that, because we just had something like that with Roanoke and it would be too predictable. My other theory is Brooke. I think it's incredibly convenient that she happened to end up at this aerobic studio. She does not seem like the type that does aerobics. She's very repressed. So her donning skin-tight outfits seems very much, and thrusting her pelvis seems outside her comfort zone. So I almost could see a backstory there where she has, for some reason, tracked one of these people or all of them down. Maybe we'll find out people are related or there's a backstory. I could very easily see it being something where Brooke is not as good as she seems, and she deliberately put herself in that class for some reason or another. I haven't figured that out. But I could very easily see that happening just because of how fortuitous and coincidental it was. And again, her attack could also be a story that she told them to get sympathy, to make sure they would let her come. But my personal preference is that we don't leave the 1984. I want it to play out. My favorite theory that I have is does not have as much tenacity with what we've seen, but I still hope that it plays out, that it stays in 1984. They keep it the way that it is, because this is such a departure for the series. We've got people playing against type. We've got awesome ambiance, music, build up, all these questions. I am so here for the universe that they are creating, even with its kitschiness. That my theory is that we're going to see connections back to the 70s. We're going to see more with what's-her-face, the nurse, because I don't know if you guys caught this, but when they're talking to her and she's like, oh, yeah, the rest of the year I work at Hawthorne Hospital. Hawthorne Hospital, Hawthorne School for Boys in Apocalypse.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm really interested to see if we stay in the 1984 universe, if in some way, because we know he loves to do it, he loves to connect to the rest of the seasons. I really hope that he doesn't, to be honest, in such a way that it turns everything on its head and it really connects. But I would love that to just be a little Easter egg somehow connecting it, but everything else is not. Because I read these theories about how, Constance Langdon would be living in LA by this time, or Agnes Mary Winstead would have been younger and going for roles at this time. There's all these desperate theories that I've read, and the one that I really don't like, to be honest with you, is, have you guys read the Big Brother theory?
The Truman Show one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
or the Big Brother,
I did not like that one either. Yeah, that's one that I'm worried about. It's sort of like what you said. I'll let you finish first before I go into stuff that I've heard.
Okay. I really just want it to stay where it is. And my favorite theory is that it will stay where it is, and we're going to see some over-the-top craziness. I think we're going to be taken by surprise, because what's interesting to me is not one of the quote-unquote main characters died in the first episode. I really like that, because usually by now, I feel like something would have happened to one of them, and they've all had something to some extent happen to them, but none of them were killed. So it's really whetted my appetite for who's going to die first, because to be very honest with you, I don't know. The only hint that I have is that the guy who plays Ray is listed as a supporting and guest character, not a main character. But again, Adina Porter, that's happened before. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. But when I try to sit there and analyze who do I think is going to be the first fodder for the killer, I can't really peg it, because it's just so hard, to be honest with you. But overall, that's a combination of theories. But I think what we're seeing, there is the potential that Ryan Murphy's going to do his usual and turn this on his head like he's done with many seasons. I just hope it stays within the 1984, and whatever it does, it doesn't completely change it to something else.
That's my hope as well. I've read a lot of theories online. There was, I think the Truman Show one is the biggest theory, where they're being filmed and that sort of thing. And I don't know if I like that one at all, so I hope that that one isn't the case. I have read the theory that it's the filming of a movie, and I've read a couple different things where it's the filming of a movie that takes place in 1984, and it's filming in the 80s. And then there's the theory that it's a present-day production shooting a movie that takes place in the 80s. If this does have a twist, and for the most part, every season since Roanoke has a twist that shows up. Usually it's around episode 5 of the season. If this does have a twist, I would rather they do like that they're filming, an 80s slasher movie in the 80s, and then all of a sudden the cast starts dying. It's a little Roanoke-ish, but it wouldn't be as much of a Roanoke, because it's Roanoke was, that they're filming, one of those like Ghost Encounters type of series, and they reunite the actual real people with the actors, and then, the actual ghosts start killing them. I would say that if it's a slasher killing the cast of a slasher movie, that would be a little different. It is very, what Scream was that? Scream 3? It would be kind of Scream 3.
Oh, yeah.
But I still wouldn't mind that, because that would be, I feel like they would do it different enough that it would be entertaining. My hope is that it does stick with the 80s theme, and if there is a twist, it's more so a twist as to like who the real killer is, and like, the real killer was in front of us all along, or something like that, versus them really taking the what we've known to be real and like twisting it over our heads and showing us that it really wasn't what we thought it was. I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. But I have read those theories online, and some of them sound interesting. I like what we're getting, and I like that the majority of the cast is playing against type, and the story is really interesting. It's very juicy. It's filmed beautifully, as you mentioned. The music is great. I'm actually glad that they didn't do on the series, like that grainy type of footage that they show in the trailers, because I felt like that would have been a little too over the top, and that would have gotten tiresome. So I'm glad that it has been shot and it's being shown to us in the actual series, beautifully shot, like regular television series are shot, versus that grainy footage, trying to give it sort of like a 70s or 80s grindhouse type
Re-recorded
of
VHS.
Exactly. I don't mind it for the trailers. They can keep on doing that shit for the trailers. I'm just glad that that isn't shown in the actual series. Maddie, what about you? Do you have any theories as to what's to come? Any theories with Mr. Jingles or any of the characters, or any twists that you see potentially coming towards us?
You guys have basically said it all already for me. You basically said like the lone survivor being the killer. So, yeah, it was pretty good. I don't know. I think that you guys are right about the killer. So,
Oh, okay. So you think Margaret's the killer?
oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But I don't know. But like, because it's the first episode and we think that already, it's kind of a little bit obvious, So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're second guessing yourself. Me too. And that's the thing, is you have to go in with these seasons now. Ever since Roanoke, you find yourself over analyzing everything. Like, could this be fake, or could this be where this is going to happen, and then we're going to find out? So like every theory I have, I end up like going over it with a fine tooth comb, and even then I'm still frustrated. So I give it to them for making us do that.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on the episode? Any small moments that I didn't mention that you would like to mention before we head into the MVP?
Only one small moment. You said juicy. Woo!
There you go. Oh, throwback. Storybook Weekly Mirror. Take a listen. Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Okay, so now it is time for the MVP, the most valuable player. State which character impressed you throughout the episode and why. Once a character has been chosen, they cannot be selected again, so choose wisely. Vinny, since you're the fresh blood here on our podcast, who's your MVP and why?
I'm just going to have to go with Zelina. Oh, wait, wrong podcast. No, honestly, I think I was tied, and it was really, really difficult. It really is difficult for me to choose, but I'm going to go with Montana, because out of all of the characters, we really did not get a lot about her past. We did not get, other than potentially the Christine car being something that she lied about because it's linked to her. And she's just, to me, the most dimensional of the characters. Right in the beginning, she's like looking at Brooke's body in the shower, being really gregarious and really outgoing. So I got the impression she was going to be kind of bubbly, but then she starts showing an edge to her. And she also starts showing like a I don't give a shit kind of attitude. As the episode kind of progressed, she lost that like, I'm a good friendly bad girl, to actually, no, I'm kind of a slutty bad girl after all. It was just a pretense. So I'm really fascinated to find out her story and see where it goes, because I feel like there's definitely an element of violence, and I really, really hope that we get to see her go mano a mano with the killer and have her own moment where she kicks some ass, because I think she seriously could.
I like it. So Montana is off the table. Maddie Fitz, who's your MVP and why?
Oh, you guys will never guess who I'm going to pick.
Margaret.
No. I'm going to pick Cook Birdie.
Actually, I could see that, because you said she was the shit, so I can totally see that.
Oh my god. Her line when they said, and this is Cook Birdie, and Xavier went, dibs, and she just claps back and says, oh, honey, you wouldn't know what to do if you had it. I was like, oh.
Maddie, she was my other one.
Yeah, I was so, oh my god, so thrilled, so, like, incredibly happy. Yeah, she's my MVP, because we all want to be that bitch.
Okay, I like it. I can dig it. I am going to go with, I feel like y'all can guess, maybe, but I'm going to go with Brooke.
Yep.
Yeah, I really like what Emma Roberts did with the character this episode. She really impressed me, and maybe it's just because I'm so used to her being the snarky bitch on American Horror Story and in Scream Queens, but I just loved seeing her get the chance to play outside of the typical character that she usually plays. I found myself rooting for her, so I hope that, well, that's a lie. I was about to say I hope that she isn't the killer. I think she could play an interesting killer, so that could be fascinating. So as of right now, I hope that they continue to allow her to play against type, and if that leads to her not being the killer, and she's the final girl, why not? If that leads to her being the actual killer at the end of it all, that could be really interesting as well. So right now, I'm rooting for Brooke. I really like her, and I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen next to the character. So now, it is time to rate the episode. How would you rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10 keys? The point system is allowed, and if you found the episode exceptional, deserving of more than a 10, you may grant it the coveted golden key, and yes, you may jingle it. Maddie, how would you rate this episode?
Oh my god, that's so funny. You may jingle it. Good one. I'm going to give it 9 keys. I think just because I'm so excited that it's back and I'm loving this season so far, so I'm excited for all the other episodes, and I think they're doing a really good job with it so far. So yeah, 9 keys.
I like it. We start off with a solid 9. Vinny, what about you?
I'm going to play against type from my history podcasting with you, and I am going to start my review season with a 10 key rating.
Ooh.
I cannot say enough how much, and this is going to make me sound like crazy and psychotic, but this show is like an example of one compartment in my mind. Like the synthesizer music, the over-the-topness, the violence, the gore, the slasher. It's the genre that I grew up with. You know, Halloween, Friday the 13th, all of that stuff. And from the start to finish, it roped me in, pulled me in back to that decade. It gave me the feeling of all that stuff that I like. The music was really important to me because I don't know if either of you are familiar with a band called Goblin. But Goblin actually influenced John Carpenter when he started using all that synthesizers and really sharp, piercing noises in Halloween. They're an Italian band. I believe they're Italian. They do a lot of horror movie soundtracks for Dario Argento, and they've used a lot of their music in other horror movies. They have a really synthesized sound, and usually I associate with, like, you know, when I started listening to that genre, like I always associated synthesizers with upbeat, you know, relatively peppy, ravey, but it can get really dark if you play with it right. And I feel like they definitely did that. They set the mood and the ambience right. And just from start to finish, I was absolutely in love with this episode. The characters, I want to know more. You know, I was not disappointed in any way like I was with the beginning of Apocalypse. You know, it just really, I want the theme to stay. I want it to stay in this 1984 summer camp, and I want to see where he goes with it if he doesn't flip it over. So I'm really excited for the rest. So solid 10.
All right, so we've got a 9 and a 10, and I will agree with one of you, and that person is, because I hardly ever agree with her, I'm going to agree with Vinny.
Oh, stop.
I'm going to give it a solid 10. I mean, yeah, just major kudos all around. It was a fantastic premiere. The characters are awesome. The visuals are fantastic. The mythos is really interesting. They left it with a really good sort of cliffhanger. Everything from the cold open to the end was just so fascinating. It's a very rewatchable episode. And yeah, so far I am 100% here for it. So I will give the premiere a solid 10 as well. And I'm jingling it. So on that note, join us next time for a brand new installment of Are You Afraid 1984. Once again, here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us.
Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/PCR. Are You Afraid? Follow us on Tumblr, areouafraid-ahs.tumblr.com. Follow Poppy Chulo Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, and YouTube at Poppy Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@poppychuloradio.com. Help support Poppy Chulo Radio financially by visiting gofundme.com/poppychuloradio. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality or blog contributor? Email talent@poppychuloradio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chulo Radio programs by visiting poppychuloradio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for Are You Afraid? 1984 and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. My co-hosts, please wish the listeners a good night.
Good night, guys. See you next week.
Good night, everyone. Sweet dreams.
Thanks for tuning in. Download new episodes of Are You Afraid 1984 every Friday via Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and the Poppy Chulo Radio archives. Good night.